Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 8th of May of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. But before we start discussing the situation on the ground, I'll provide you a few international updates. And we will make some changes on this map. And the first and the most important change is connected with Ramzan Kadyrov, the head of Chechenska Republic and the head of Bakhmut special unit. If you remember, yesterday we made the changes on this map, moving this icon right in the back of Prigozhin. We thought, and there were updates, that the Russians took a decision to support Wagner's in their storm operation of Bakhmut, but the source on the ground and the Russian sources are saying that there are no special unit Bakhmut in the vicinity of Bakhmut, and that Prigozhin and his PMC Wagner is going to capture Bakhmut by their own with support of some VDV and airborne forces on the flanks. So that's why I believe that we can move this icon of Kadyrov back to his Chechenska Republic and with his special unit Bakhmut. As you know, tomorrow is the 9th of May and the Victory Day, and the Russian sources are saying that Vladimir Putin is going to have a very strong speech tomorrow. He's going to tell something important to people. Of course, he is going to say a lot about the Second World War, about the results and so on. And today a lot of leaders from the CIA region have already gone to Moscow, to the capital of Russia. For example, the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, has already moved to Moscow. Furthermore, sources are saying that, for example, the Prime Minister of Armenia, Pashinyan, have already moved to Moscow, or he's planning to do this. Furthermore, for example, the president of Kazakhstan also is going to visit Moscow these days. So let's make this icon as well, and many other leaders from Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, the ex-Soviet countries are going to do the same and going to take part in the tomorrow's parade and tomorrow show in Moscow. So we'll see what is going to be next. Of course, this is very dangerous because we understand that probably the Ukrainians are going to make some actions, some maybe attacks these days. I believe that the Russians have a very nice security there, but anyway, this is very dangerous and this is very risky from their side. Another very interesting international update is coming from Moldova. For example, today the Transnistria, the head of Transnistria, made official request for Russian Federation to move more peacekeeper forces in this region. And this is a pattern. First of all, if you remember, the entire special military operation started after the official request of the heads of DPR and LPR to sign some kind of ally agreements and so on. And after that, the Russians launched their special military operation. The same situation took place in Syria. If you remember, the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, made official request to send forces in Syria, and after that the Russians sent some forces. And today we see the same pattern in Transnistria, where the head of this country asked and required Russia to send more peacekeeper forces. So this pattern, and that's probably the chances of some escalation of the conflict in this area has been increased by that. And if you remember the sources, a few weeks ago we discussed that the Ukrainians have already sent some forces in this area, and there are like few thousands of soldiers there, up to 10,000, and the Ukrainians were planning to use them to start some provocation after that to capture Kolbasna MO depot. Furthermore, when talking about the NATO countries, they have already established some kind of no-fly zone or entire control zone over this area. They're sending hundreds and maybe hundreds of their aircrafts in this area, trying to make as much as possible, trying to find out as much as possible. Currently, they're not getting deeper in direction of the Black Sea because of the incident that took place a few weeks ago when the Russians managed to shut down the Western countries' drone, the NATO drone. But anyway, we see that some kind of intensifying of actions from the NATO countries, and of course by these flights, by this area, they're trying to cover two regions, either Sevastopol and Transnistria as well, trying to understand the Ukrainian and Russian positions and so on, and what the Ukrainians can do in both these areas. So the situation is getting more and more complicated. Anyway, soon, I believe after the 9th of May, we're going to understand what exactly is going to happen there. And now let's move to the ground and let's discuss the situation on the ground. And of course, the most important updates about the most fierce clashes are coming from Bakhmut. I have already updated the Western sources map showing like the real progress of the Russians in this area, and currently there are fierce clashes in the northwestern part of the Western Bakhmut. The Russians are saying that there are very heavy clashes on the streets of Cherniakovska and Medvedevo. The Russians currently are trying to encircle this area and to connect and to establish some road and connections with the Russian forces who are currently pushes or maybe made some kind of operational pause on the north of Khromovo. So currently we understand that this week or the next few days is going to be on the flag of battle for Khromovo for this region, and I believe that the Russians are able to establish control over this area and they will do this. More and more sources are saying and providing more confirmations that the Russians are not entering the Western citadel. They understand the risks, they understand that almost every single building in this area is mined, and if the Ukrainians understand that the Russians are getting inside, they will start detonating and exploding, ruining the buildings, and which can cause a lot of damage to the Russians. From the other side, the Russians, after the resolving of the conflicts between the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation and PMC Wagner's, started bombing and shelling the Ukrainian positions in Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkovka and Konstantinovka along this arc. And the Russians are saying that as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainians, for example, there was a missile attack in Kamushivaha, and the Russians are saying they provided video and photo confirmation, and they're saying that as a result of that attack, the Ukrainians lost 120 volunteers in this area. There was some kind of positions of those forces. Furthermore, the Russians are saying that as a result of attack, they destroyed the ammo depot of 54th Mechanized Brigade in Verkhnyokamyansk, and we remember that this 54th Mechanized Brigade is located on the south of Belogorovka, securing this area from the attack in their back. Another warehouse and ammo depots were destroyed in Drushkovka, and some positions of 80th and the 54th and 50th Brigade. For example, today, for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, the Ministry of Defense reported about some kind of 50th Brigade. Currently, I don't even know what type of this brigade, but anyway, this brigade was attacked in Drushkovka. I believe it's some kind of reserves for some plan B or extra decisions or extra situation that might have place in Bakhmut and so on. But as we understand, for now there are no changes on the ground in the vicinity of this area, and so we're going to move further. And when talking about Donetsk, as you can see, there are no icons as well, but the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours and maybe 48 hours made few attempts to cut the salient in the vicinity of Krasnogorovka. The Ukrainians made few attempts to return control over Veselaya and over Krasnogorovka, and of course over Kamyanka. For now, there are no updates or reports about the progress on the results of those attacks, and of course the Ukrainians are trying to attack the salient from the north as well. So probably they will try to regain control of this bridgehead, and it just depends on the Russians whether they're able to hold this bridgehead or not, because this is very important and the Ukrainians understand the risks if they give the Russians possibilities to establish bridgehead and to improve their defense positions in this area. When talking about South Donetsk and Zaporozhye area, there are no changes, just the regular artillery duels, just the destroying of Ukrainian artillery systems, their ammo depots, warehouses, fuel depots, and so on. The Russians are pretty successful in this area. For example, as a result of artillery duels, the Russians destroyed at least 2 ammo depots, one on the town in the settlement by the name of Vodyanovo. They destroyed the ammo depot of the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, this area. This one, that's on the north of Ugledar, and another ammo depot of 128th Storm Assault Brigade in the area of Kirova, so somewhere in the north of Orekhov. The Russians continue bombing Orekhov, the Ukrainian positions in this area. Recently they published another video of explosion. You can see this in the middle of this video if you are able to see this. So the Russians continue attacking this area. Very interesting updates are coming from Kherson. The fightings for the islands between the banks of the river continues, and the Russians reported that as a result of attack, the Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers and 7 armored vehicles. The losses are very heavy. One interesting update about the Western deployment map. We discussed that there is a recent changes that most of the Ukrainian brigades in the vicinity of Kherson and Dnipropetrovsk, Dnipro and Zaporozhye were moved from the north to the south, closer to the combat lines, and there is just one group of the forces that we couldn't find any changes, and this is the force in the vicinity of Odessa and on the northwest of Nikolaev. These brigades like 38th 37th, 38th Marine Brigade and mechanized 21st, 22nd and 41st, and probably the Ukrainians are going to use them for some escalation or some provocation on the Transnistria areas. Probably. I'm not saying that's 100% for sure, but something is going to happen in this area, and I'm based my conclusions on the official request to increase the number of peacekeepers in this area. Also, very interesting numbers are coming from Kupiansk. The Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of fierce fightings the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians lost at least 15 armored vehicles, including 3 tanks. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is the heaviest losses of the Ukrainians since the beginning of the special military operation. Probably we are the witnesses of some kind of intensifying of action from the Russian side in this area. We need more information, more data, and furthermore, the Russians reported that as a result of missile attack, they destroyed the warehouse in Balaklia. It used to be like the biggest warehouse of shells. Later, the Russians managed to capture, but as a result of counter-offensive operation, the Ukrainians returned control. But there were no shells in this area, and currently the Ukrainians use this area as their own warehouse. And as you can see, these numbers and this event are connected. The Russians increased intensifying their offensive operation in this area, and furthermore, to reduce the Ukrainian logistic possibilities, they destroyed this warehouse, probably to increase their chances to penetrate and to achieve more success in this area. If you remember yesterday, we discussed that probably there was some kind of attack from the Ukrainian side in direction of Alshan, and as a result of that they managed to improve their bridgehead, but we still haven't received any confirmation or any piece of information from the Russian side about that case. So probably that was some kind of speculation. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.